It's one thing to sign a peace deal on paper, and it's another to ensure the other side actually keeps it. That's the dilemma facing Europe as the guns in Ukraine quiet down and diplomats begin discussions. The war may be moving toward an uneasy truce, but everyone knows that Russia's idea of peace can change overnight. This time, Europe isn't waiting to find out. Behind closed doors, military planners are creating a safety net, a plan to place European troops inside Ukraine to ensure that peace means more than just a signature and a handshake. The idea may seem bold, even reckless. But for the countries leading this initiative, the United Kingdom, Poland, France, and the Baltic states, it's simply the logical next step. If peace does arrive, they don't want to spend the next decade watching Moscow reload and launch another invasion. London's plan is simple: form a multinational task force under the coalition of the willing, ready to enter Ukraine as soon as a truce is in place. According to recent comments from the UK's Defence Secretary John Healey, that plan is no longer theoretical. It has become operational. Healey's speech in London on October 20th went beyond mere diplomatic optimism, when he stated, "If President Trump can broker a peace, then we will be ready to help secure that peace for the long term." It was more than political rhetoric. It sent a clear message that British and European troops are prepared to deploy, not as invaders, nor as peacekeepers in blue helmets, but as deterrents. The UK has been preparing for this possibility for months. Over 200 military planners from more than 38 countries have quietly worked on coordination, logistics, and readiness measures. If the call comes, Europe will respond, and the countdown has already begun. The coalition of the willing is more than just a talking point. It marks a significant change in Europe's post-war identity. For decades, NATO has been the umbrella for European defense efforts. But this coalition operates separately, forming a streamlined structure that can act without waiting for all 32 NATO members or Washington's approval. It's an alliance of around 24 nations, mostly European and some outside the EU, united by one goal: to ensure that when peace comes, Russia doesn't get another chance to break it. For the UK, leading this coalition is about both responsibility and reputation. Since Brexit, London has worked hard to prove it remains a key player in European security. It was the first European nation to send modern battle tanks to Ukraine, the first to provide long-range cruise missiles, and the first to commit to training thousands of Ukrainian recruits. The 100-year partnership agreement between the UK and Ukraine, signed earlier this year, was more than symbolic. It signaled that Britain views Ukraine as a long-term ally, not just a temporary cause. The coalition has two main purposes. First, it aims to ensure that any peace achieved is genuine and defensible. Second, it seeks to provide Ukraine with a tangible deterrent, a visible presence that communicates to Russia, "If you try again, you'll face Europe, not just Ukraine." Healey didn't specify what this deployment might include, but several possible models have emerged. One scenario could involve up to 100,000 European troops stationed across strategic areas of Ukraine: Lviv in the west, Dnipro in the center, and Odessa along the southern coast. Their goal wouldn't be to confront Russia directly, but to make any renewed attack politically damaging. Targeting these troops would mean targeting NATO nations, forcing Moscow to reconsider. Another option might involve a lighter hybrid Guardian model, a force of 10,000 to 20,000 personnel made up of advisors, trainers, and air defense coordinators. These troops would integrate within Ukraine's military, assisting with modernization, sharing intelligence, and monitoring compliance with ceasefire agreements. This would not only reassure Kyiv but also complicate matters for Russia, making it harder to stage provocations or hybrid attacks during a period of so-called peace. The risks are clear. If this mission starts before an official peace deal, it could lead to a direct clash with Russian forces still present in Ukraine. But waiting too long could also be risky. Every month that passes without deterrence gives Russia the chance to rebuild its arsenal and redeploy its worn-out units. This is the challenge Europe faces: act early and risk escalation, or act late and risk becoming irrelevant. However, Europe's mindset has shifted. After over 2 years of conflict and numerous failed diplomatic attempts, the belief that Moscow can be trusted to maintain peace has vanished. Western intelligence reports suggest that within 18 months of any ceasefire, Russia could restore up to 70% of its pre-war missile capacity. For European defense planners, that timeline underscores the urgency of their mission. They're not preparing for an endless peace. They're working to ensure the next war doesn't occur. Russia's response has been predictably hostile. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused the coalition of planning foreign occupation and warned that any European troop presence in Ukraine would cross a red line. But behind closed doors, Russian strategists view the situation differently. A permanent European military presence in Ukraine would drain Russian resources, diminish its regional influence, and disrupt its long-term strategy of destabilizing its neighbors. To them, the coalition is not just a military initiative, it's a geopolitical disaster. Across the Atlantic, the U.S. political environment adds more complexity. President Trump's fluctuating remarks, from supporting Ukraine's full territorial restoration in September to suggesting a freeze of battle lines weeks later, have left European capitals anxious. The concern is straightforward. If Washington's support falters, Europe will have to fill the gap. That's why the coalition was designed to operate independently of the United States. It's not anti-American, it's anti-uncertainty. Public sentiment in the UK backs this approach. YouGov surveys show that 80% of Britons want Ukraine to win, and 69% care deeply about that outcome. More than 60% believe Russia would restart the war within a decade of any peace agreement. This isn't just abstract support, it's practical realism. People in Britain recognize that if Ukraine falls, the threat moves westward, toward the Baltics, Poland, and Europe's borders. Supporting Ukraine has become a form of self-defense. Beneath the political speeches and survey results, a quieter race is happening within Europe's defense ministries. In London, Warsaw, and Vilnius, contingency plans are being refined down to the last detail. Air defense integration, troop staging zones, fuel logistics, and evacuation routes. Plans are in place in case the signal comes. The British Army has already assigned rapid deployment brigades for potential operations in Ukraine. At the same time, France advocates for a parallel European air mission, much like NATO's Baltic air policing, to monitor Ukrainian airspace and deter drone and missile incursions. The focus on readiness has intensified following a series of incidents involving mysterious drone sightings over British military bases used by U.S. forces. In response, the UK granted its troops new authority to shoot down unidentified drones without prior approval, clearly indicating that this hybrid war is already crossing into Allied territory. These orders, once restricted to military sites, may soon extend to civilian airports if Russian drone incursions continue. It's a quiet escalation, but it highlights the seriousness of the threat. Meanwhile, Moscow faces its own pressing challenges. Sanctions have severely impacted its economy, and its war machine struggles to maintain pace with losses. Analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, predict that by mid-2026, Russia may experience significant fiscal shortages if oil prices don't rebound and foreign imports stay restricted. Inflation has eaten into defense salaries, equipment quality is declining, and even loyal propagandists have begun to express fatigue. Europe is aware of this and understands that standing firm might be the best strategy. Patience, in this case, could be its greatest weapon. Yet, there remains one undeniable wildcard: the peace talks themselves. Recent diplomatic efforts between Trump and Putin have already faltered. The planned summit in Hungary, seen as a possible breakthrough, was called off after Moscow rejected Washington's ceasefire terms. Secretly, Russia sought a veto over any foreign troop deployments in Ukraine, an obvious attempt to undermine the coalition before it starts. This demand was, of course, turned down. But it revealed the real struggle, not just over land, but over who gets to define peace. And that's the crux of Europe's strategy. The coalition's deployment, if it ever happens, won't just secure borders. It will secure credibility. For too long, European peacekeeping missions have been reactive, arriving only after disaster strikes. This time, the plan is to take initiative, to establish deterrence before the next wave of aggression begins. Whether that approach is politically viable remains in question. European leaders are aware of the stakes. One misstep, one Russian mistake, and the line between peacekeeping and war could disappear overnight. But doing nothing isn't an option anymore. As Healey stated in his London speech, "To secure peace, we must be ready for war." This phrase captures the coalition's goal, not to fight, but to prevent fighting from restarting. The coming months will reveal if Europe is genuinely ready to act on those words. The planners are prepared. The troops are prepared. What's lacking is the moment. If and when that moment arrives, it will signal a new chapter in European security, one where the continent no longer waits for someone else to safeguard it. The question remains whether Putin will view this as deterrence or provocation. Either way, the countdown to deployment has started. For the first time in a long time, Europe isn't looking to Washington for approval. It's focusing east towards Kyiv. If you found this analysis useful, subscribe and stay tuned as we monitor the coalition's next moves, from London's war rooms to the borderlands of Eastern Europe. The next decision may not only decide Ukraine's fate, but could redefine Europe's role in the world for decades ahead.